Thank you. So before we get started, I have one quick question for all of you. Folks in the back, can you come a little bit closer? I feel so lonely up here. Just a little bit closer. Thank you. There's a method to my madness. I promise there's a reason for this. And a little bit closer to each other. You know, you don't have to sit on anybody's lap, but just a little bit closer. Thank you. All right, real quick, I figure I should probably introduce myself. This is, first of all, my very first ever Codegarden. Thank you. Hi, my name is Semira. I am your friendly neighborhood engineering manager at Granger. I am a Northwestern University alum. I graduated from there in computer science. I was recently appointed chair of the Young Professionals Committee for the Agile Alliance. I've also been involved with them as a program chair over the last couple years, helping them to plan their conference. In my very spare time, I am a very avid science fiction nerd, voracious reader, tennis player, and like you mentioned, I am, in fact, a twin. So there's another one of me in America. So I have a quick question for you all, and I will want to see some raised hands. Have you ever experienced a professional failure? Let's say a failed deployment. I should probably see everybody's hands. Thank you. A missed project deadline, pushing something straight up to prod, missing all of the lower environments. I've done that probably more than I care to admit. Well, the reality is, first of all, you're a normal human being. But working in technology, the pace of change is so rapid that there is failure is not a bug. It is very much a feature, right? It's how we learn, right? Engineers learn by doing, especially doing it wrong first. The next best framework, tool, programming language that everyone's going to be using, the next new Umbraco features, they've popped up into somebody's head and they're coming at you really fast. But here's the thing, how we respond to failure determines whether or not we're going to learn from it or we stagnate. So that's what we're gonna do together today. We're gonna kind of break down failure. So I have a couple of key takeaways for you guys. First of all, using failure as feedback. So how can we create an opportunity to turn failure into an opportunity for continuous improvement? How to learn from failure, because as it turns out, that is actually something that does not happen accidentally. The role that psychological safety plays in all of this, and then the need for a bit of a safety net. But we're gonna get into that a bit more later. I can't mention failure without first talking about psychological safety. Innovation dies with fear. Teams are not going to take risks if they feel like they might be punished for mistakes. Psychological safety means that people feel safe being honest, even when the news is going to be bad. Specifically, it's defined as the belief that one will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes, and that the team is safe for interpersonal risk-taking. Now, let's start with a bit of a shared understanding. According to the psychology lexicon, failure is defined as the experience of not achieving a desired outcome or goal. But I'd like to go a little bit deeper. It's very layered. Think about maybe the emotional outcomes. You might feel a bit of shame, some guilt. For me personally, I tend to feel a lot of frustration with myself. Behavioral outcomes. You might become a little bit risk averse, maybe withdrawn or potentially burnt out. You might even start to take unnecessary risks. Social outcomes. Maybe you lost a little bit of credibility. Maybe you started to fear being excluded or sidelined. In my opinion, when many of us have conversations about failure, I don't think we talk enough about what it takes to get back up. And learning from it, learning from failure, as humans is not something that we do intrinsically. It actually takes very intentional effort to learn how to do. So let's look at the science. There's a really great study called You Think Failing is Hard, So Is Learning from It. The name is a little bit, on the nose, but I'd like to think it gets the point across. But they had some really interesting findings. The first most important one is that, as it turns out, humans are really bad at learning from failure. And that's for two reasons. First of all, the emotional aspect, right? The experience of failure kind of threatens our sense of self-worth, and so we might just not reflect on it. And the second is cognitive. As humans, we tend to seek out information that agrees with our beliefs and expectations, aka cognitive bias. So even when the data might be right in front of you, looking you in the eyes, you might either misread it or just outright reject it. But have no fear, there is a way forward. First of all, learning from others' mistakes. At Grainger, within my company, every quarter we have an internal tech conference that we call an Ignite Week. And failure talks are actually a pretty common theme within that. Recently, our security team had a failed rollout of Zscaler. Let's just say it was a painful experience for all of us. But within their Ignite Week talk, they talked about why that rollout went wrong, how it impacted users, and what they're going to change in the future. These create a great opportunity not only for the team to be able to reflect, but also for us to get a view at what it took for them to learn from that experience. Soliciting external feedback. This one's kind of hard. It takes a lot of courage and also a sense of psychological safety within the environment that you're in. But if you have trusted people around you, can you ask them, what is something that I can change in the future? What development might I be in need of? Focusing on what is controllable. So attribution theory shows that really resilient people blame the effort or the strategy that they use, so specifically controllable factors, rather than things like lack of ability or luck. And then deliberate reflections. In my very biased personal opinion, I don't believe that retrospectives are optional. They are a great opportunity to be able to learn from the team's experiences, and when done properly, it's a great chance to learn from failures. So, when it comes to failure, did I just mention retrospectives? They're a really powerful tool when done properly. I think out of all of the companies that I've ever worked for, Grainger is probably the only one that had a regular habit of running retrospectives. But before that, I worked for a very, very small consulting firm. I was one of 10 employees and one of 2 client-facing engineers. And when you work for a company that small, you end up wearing quite a lot of hats. So in this particular project I'm talking about, I was a mix of project manager, developer, and security analyst. We were making some improvements to a threat and vulnerability module in ServiceNow in conjunction with some ServiceNow consultants. Now, unfortunately, the manager who owned this project lacked a lot of sprint discipline, we'll call it, right? Regularly changing stories in the middle of a sprint, adding in new features in the middle of a sprint. And I didn't push back on that, not for a very long time, because I thought I have to just do whatever it takes to keep the client happy. Whatever it takes, just keep them happy. Well, predictably, what did that turn into? Being very over budget on this project, way past the projected deadline. And then, of course, we have a team full of engineers who have literally no idea what to prioritize. Now, I'll be honest, I was a little bit terrified. When you work for a really small company like that, a major fumble might mean you lose your job. And I had seen it happen to coworkers of mine there before. Now, I want to give a quick little bit of background. Within this company that we were consulting for, if you mentioned anything Agile related, or really the word Agile itself, it was as if I had said a 4-letter word. So when I mentioned, hey guys, maybe we should probably run a retrospective, nobody was happy with me. The answer to me was, we don't do that here. So, in my desperation, I would love to keep my income Hail Mary to my boss was, let me make the client an offer. Can I offer them 1 free hour of my time, but that time has to be a retrospective, and I can turn that project around? Well, my boss said yes. The client said yes because that's just good math, 1 free hour of my time, right? So that 1 hour really quickly turned into 2. Now, of course, I had to referee the retrospective and make sure that there was no major finger pointing going on, but we came away with a couple of really important understandings. Now, the first was that the lack of sprint discipline was costing us a lot in development hours and literal money, right? Developers aren't cheap. These constant changes to stories meant that we were revisiting the same work over and over and over again. That's why we were past the project deadline. And then at the end, we came away with a shared understanding and a project plan to move forward. I guess that manager enjoyed the retrospective so much, she decided to have me continue doing these at the end of each sprint through the rest of the project. I also got to keep my job, so that was very helpful. Yeah, I needed that income. But I tell this story because it speaks to the value of retrospectives as a really helpful tool when it comes to learning from failure, when done properly. So, I am not talented at coming up with very clever acronyms. I cannot do that for you. So instead, I propose the idea of a resilience safety net. The idea is that this is a set of psychological, technical, and cultural supports to help engineers navigate and recover from failure. The same way that our systems are more robust with automated tests and rollbacks, humans also need mechanisms to be able to safely experiment, reflect, and to iterate when things go wrong. Now, the idea is that this net doesn't remove all risk, but rather we're trying to make risk just a little bit more recoverable. So we have to start with psychological safety. That has to be number one, right? Creating a team culture where it feels safe to speak up, ask questions, and admit when you need help without a fear of retribution. Next, reflection tools. I feel like whenever I talk about retrospectives, I say the word blameless a lot, but blameless retrospectives focus specifically on systems rather than individuals. So instead of saying, who particularly in my team messed up, can we ask, what did we learn? What might we need to change in the future? And, like I mentioned, retrospective saved my job, so I think they're valuable. Technical guardrails. Think about things like peer reviews, feature flags, automated tests, unit tests, etc. Tools that help us to be able to limit the blast radius of a potentially harmful mistake. On my team personally, if we have questions about a ticket that we're unsure of, or we have a ticket that comes through one of our support channels that we're just not quite sure how to respond to, there is somebody within the team that is ready to pair with you, take a look at your PR, or help in whatever way they can. Right now, we are also in the middle of a very, very large-scale migration effort, basically moving all of these runtime services that are living in our AWS 1.0 environment over into brand spanking new 3.0. But we don't own those runtime services. The data scientists who have deployed their models into our environment own those. Now, we could have said, all right, guys, you have an end date. We're going to decommission 1.0, get it done by this date. We didn't do that. Why? Because as brilliant as these people are, they don't have an infrastructure background. So we would be setting them up to fail immediately if we put this into our hands without the help of technical guardrails like PRs or pair programming to help them move forward. Now, does that mean that there were no mistakes, that nobody struggled at all? No, of course they did. But they had dedicated engineers to help them work through those difficulties. We have failure literacy training. As managers, lead engineers, principals, seniors, can you help normalize failure through storytelling? Hearing that even a senior has pushed a bug to prod helps to build empathy and also kind of reduce some shame. And like I mentioned, those Ignite weeks where failure talks are a very common theme. Why? Because they help us learn from it, even if I wasn't on that team. Mentorship and peer coaching. Have any of you, when you were a junior, had a lead or a senior engineer on your team who just wasn't really interested in supporting you? Yeah, I've been there. And I will say it was a terrifying, extremely stressful, and kind of traumatizing experience. As more experienced people in your team, you're a part of that safety net for both your peers and the juniors that work for you. Recovery time and recognition. Treat recovery as a part of your delivery cycle rather than just continuously focusing on sprint velocity. Celebrate the lessons that you learned, not just the shipped features. In my team, we have something that we call Innovation Fridays. Every single week, we have time blocked off on our calendars. Let's say if you'd like to try out a new implementation you were thinking about, congrats, you have the time. Or if you've decided, you know what, there's an area where I feel a little bit weak, maybe I need some more development. Great, Friday afternoon, have at it. So, I would like to run a little activity with you. So for the folks that I had you move up, that's kind of why. So I'd like to start with a little bit of a warm-up. Shall we say flashback? I'd like you to turn to the person next to you, or possibly behind you, and talk real quick, we'll have 2 minutes, a time that you or your team experienced a failure at work. Or if you are just very perfect and you've never struggled, think about a really big public failure like CrowdStrike. I'll give you 2 minutes. And I'll let you know when that time is up. There we go. And about a minute left. 6:35. Okay. 30 seconds. All right. Do you feel thoroughly re-traumatized? Awesome. We're gonna do more. Okay. I want you to look back at the components of a safety net. And I want you to stand up if you can, if you're able, and form into some small groups. And I want you to ask, what do you already have? What is working well already for you within your organization? And what isn't? What is inconsistent? What is missing? Thank you. And we give you maybe about 5 minutes, give or take, but small groups. So what is missing from your safety net? And if everything is working well, why? All right. That's me. We are at time. Okay, one more thing and then I promise you can stop talking. Okay, stay standing, please. I beg of you. Last item. After having spoken about what hasn't worked for you, what you might be missing or is inconsistent, again, take a look back at the safety net components. I want you each to choose one category where you could potentially strengthen your safety net in a small way, right? What is the small change that you could pilot maybe this next upcoming sprint or even this next month? What support, so maybe what kinds of tools or people, maybe you need manager approval or permission, right? What do you need? And then how do you know it might have helped? What ways could you potentially measure that? I'm gonna give you another 5 minutes. All right. You guys can sit back down now. So, since I shared my very embarrassing, almost losing my job blunder, was there anyone that wanted to share their experience? Just curious. You don't have to, I'm not gonna force you to do it. But I would like to hear it. Yes, no, maybe so. Yes? Okay. Oh. Can I ask, what did you learn from that? And that is absolutely fair. Okay, I won't force you guys to do any more of that, but you failed. Now what? Well, let's bring it on home, right? We have to start by taking intentional steps to learn from your failure, because as it turns out, that's not going to happen accidentally. It takes acknowledging your cognitive bias by seeking out external feedback, really deliberate reflection through retrospectives, and you'll hear me say the word blameless a lot, blameless retrospectives, and learning from others. In the same way that we build fault tolerance and redundancy into our systems, it's really important that we build resiliency into our teams. I personally like to think of it as a bit of a safety net, not to catch you if you fall, but when you do, because when you work in engineering, whether or not you are an engineer, failure is pretty inevitable. The really good news is that with the right tools, cultural supports, and mindset, failure does not have to be something that's going to break you. It can be something that we are able to learn from instead. Thank you. And if you'd like to continue the conversation, I am also on LinkedIn.